Hello, I'm Nafis Ali. Today I'll be discussing the entire history of the Pullman Standard 15 and 1600 series Type 1 Red Line cars operating on the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority or the MBTA Red Line. I'll be diving into its entire history from the contract, designing, construction, service life, and retirement. As a disclaimer, I have used a lot of non-original materials in order to show what event is taking place. This video is also demonetized, and its purpose is to teach people about transit history in Boston, Massachusetts. Now let's dive into the history of the number 1 Red Line trains operating on the Red Line. Chapter 1: The South Shore Extension. It was the 1960s. At the time, the T had a rolling stock of 92 subway cars branded as the Cambridge-Dorchester Type 5 cars, or dubbed as the Bluebirds, numbered 1400 to 1491, built by Pullman Standard from 1962 to 1963. The Red Line at the time originally ran from Harvard Square, Cambridge, Massachusetts to Ashmont Station, Dorchester, Boston, Massachusetts. The new Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority in 1964 began planning to extend the Red Line rapid transit system further into South Shore, Massachusetts, based on the original 1945 Coolidge Commission report, which calls for extending the Red Line beyond Savin Hill to run along the Old Colony Railroad into South Shore, Massachusetts. In a 1963 annual report showcased transit crisis in Quincy due to the termination of the Old Colony passenger service lines. The MBTA wanted to take this advantage to expand the Red Line into South Shore, Massachusetts. In 1964, United States Congress of Urban Mass Transportation Act of 1964 made an allowance of $375 million nationwide, and Massachusetts was eligible to receive $47 million. On July 28, 1965, the T announced an agreement with the New Haven Railroad to acquire 11 miles 13 kilometers of the former Old Colony Railroad from South Braintree and Quincy, Massachusetts to Fort Point Channel in South Boston, Massachusetts for $2.5 million. This was for the new South Shore extension of the Red Line, beginning from the Red Line junction between Columbia Road Station, which is now JFK UMass Station, and Andrews Station. The line would travel on the former right-of-way of the Old Colony Railroad into Quincy, Massachusetts, making 3 new stops at North Quincy Station, Wollaston Station, and terminating at Quincy Center Station for the first phase. Then the line would be eventually extended into Braintree, Massachusetts for the second phase. The first phase being 6 1/4 miles distance from the Dorchester Avenue Tunnel portal to Granite Street in Quincy. Eventually, on November 1st, 1965, the contract was signed with the New Haven Railroad, which also included the purchase of the Dover Street Railroad facility. The total cost of this project was $75.4 million, with funds being provided by the state of Massachusetts, Urban Mass Transit Administration, United States Department of Housing, and the Urban Development of HUD, with the additional purchase of the Eastern Mass Railroad for $6,250,000 on March 29th of 1968. Eventually, construction for the new South Shore branch began in 1966. This new branch would require proper signaling and safety features for trains to operate, in which installation of automatic train control, signaling, and communication would be installed. At the time, the existing Cambridge-Dorchester Type 5 fleet did not qualify these features, and newer rolling stock would be required for the new South Shore extension. Chapter 2: The Mock-up. With construction of the South Shore branch, the T teamed up with the Cambridge 7 INC began engineering and designing on what the new South Shore car would be like. In late 1966, the mock-up car was manufactured at the MBTA Everett Maintenance Repair Warehouse in Everett, Massachusetts. The car would be designed like a commuter rail coach, since the length of the South Shore branch would be very long and would operate on surface level. Gray-tinted reflective windows would be added with sound insulation, light and heat reflective windows. Also, a commuter rail style interior with transverse individual seats would be included in order to maintain a replica feel of a commuter rail train. The car was rounded in shape on the front based on the existing Cambridge-Dorchester Type 5 cars 1490 and 1491, which had a design based off the trains in Chicago, Illinois on the CTA. Eventually, the car was displayed at Quincy Square on May 18 of 1967. With positive feedback from the public, although there were some critics about the design, with the authorities suggesting design changes. An earlier model was in production in January of 1965, and on July 10, 1966, it was displayed at the South Shore Residence Weymouth Rotary Club. However, it was also rejected. Pullman Standard later suggested a modern, improved design of the existing Cambridge-Dorchester Type 5 1400 series fleet, in which Pullman built for the Red Line back in 1962. Chapter 3: The Contract. The T reached out to Pullman Standard of South Shore, Chicago, Illinois, and on December 27, 1967, the T signed a contract for 76 new rapid transit series, 24 single cars numbered 1500 to 1523, and 52 cars numbered 1600 to 1651, which would operate in 26 married pairs. With a total cost of $13,042,212 each 1500 train costing at $179,164 and each 1600's two-car train costing at $330,143 The original bid for each 1500 series car was $175,292 and the original bid for each 1600 car was $161,105. Chapter 4: Engineering. In 1968, the team at Pullman began engineering and designing of what the new South Shore car would be like. The cars would be commuter rail based, designed for the long 6-mile distance and would operate on surface level. The trains would be designed for an outdoor climate and to operate by the Atlantic Ocean in Quincy. These cars would be also designed to perform in wet weather conditions. These cars would be 69 feet 6 inches long, 9 feet and 1.5 inches wide, 12 feet 8, 7, 16 inches tall. The exterior body would be constructed with brushed satin smooth aluminum steel with a high-strength steel underframe. The roof sheets would contain 66-foot corrugated aluminum alloy, which would be the largest sheets of extruded aluminum ever created. Each car would have 7 picture windows each side, which are 26 inches tall and 42 inches wide, with sound insulation, lighting, and heat reflective tinted gray, with 28% transmission in order to maintain an outside landscape view. With 2 operators opening and closing windows featured each side, 4 for the 1500 series. 3 OM Edward electropneumatic embodied sliding doors, which are 4 feet long, 6 feet 6 inches tall, would be featured on each side. The front of each 1600 unit and both sides of each 1500 units would feature a manual hand crank destination sign with 2 manual hand crank destination signs on each side. Low-up car number plates would also be featured on each side. An anti-climber, center door, and panel bumpers would be featured in both ends of each car, with a windshield in the operator's window. 4 headlights would be featured in front of each car, which means double for the 1500s. 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom in order to navigate to the dark tunnels and dark at night. The interior walls would have plastic side trims with fiberglass insulation and a sound deadening coating. The flooring would be constructed from rubber plywood. The ceiling would be constructed from vinyl covered aluminum. 2 rows of fluorescent lighting with source shield diffusers to control lighting and glare would also be featured. 64 leather cushioned bucket seats would be featured in transverse style to create a commuter rail style interior. The seating is featured to be fire resistant neoprene foam, which should be 40 inches wide and 17 inches tall, with pedestals added. These cars would also have stainless steel poles and hand strips attached. These cars also included space for wheelchairs. The maximum capacity of each car was 239 passengers. An emergency driver's assistance intercom would be featured in the ends of each car. These cars would also feature air conditioning for the hot summer days and heating for the cold winter days. The 1500 series would contain 2 operators' cabs because they would be constructed as single units, while the 1600 series would have 1 operator's cab per each car, and 2 cars facing the other direction from the operating cabs would be coupled together in order to operate forward and reverse. The operator's cab would be 10 feet wide with a depth of 3 feet 4 inches and 6 feet 7 inches tall. The operator's cab would contain 2 leather cushion bucket seats, a crash pillar with a Wapco Chinstone Type C3B master controller, a velocity meter, a wheel slip controller, a microphone cord, radio and public address system which allows the speaker announcements, contact with the dispatcher or guard, a couple switch, disconnector, uncouple switch, door signal switch, headlights, air gauge, windshield wipers, air horn, and a reset feature. Most importantly, an automatic train control or ATC motor and an automatic train operation or ATO would be featured for safety. The undercarriage equipment would be manufactured from General Steel. The mechanical equipment would contain 4 Westinghouse 1460B traction motors with Westinghouse XCB248E control systems. These would be equipped with Wapco R2 braking units with D4 Wapco compressors, in which the compressor's capacity is 25 cubic feet per minute. These would be run by cam propulsion control with Symington Wain 8F719C couplers with rubber draft gears. These would be powered by 600 VD high voltage with direct currents from the third rail shoes. Each car would have two underparts, each underpart containing four wheels, axles, traction motors, and other mechanical equipment. Chapter 5: Manufacturing. Once engineering and designing was completed, manufacturing and production of the new South Shore cars would be done at the Pullman Standard factory plant in South Shore, Chicago, Illinois, beginning in early 1969. Brushed aluminum steel would be forged into shape, drilling out spaces for windows, doors, lights, cables, and electrical equipment. The interior structure was constructed from high-strength steel with 66-foot aluminum corrugated steel, which would be added for the roof. A thin stripe of red was added in order to represent the red line, and the T logo was added in order to represent the MBTA. The mechanical equipment would be installed, which are 6 feet 10 inches scaled wheelbase being installed with 51 inches truck centers equipped using 33950 trucks. Each car would contain two underparts with four wheels, traction motors, axles, wires, and mechanical equipment being installed. Once the undercarriage was finished, they would be fused underneath the cars. Next came the interior with paneling, plastic sheets, flooring, ceiling, seating, stainless steel poles, end strips, windows, doors, lighting, AC, and heating units being installed. The 1600 series were completed first and were stored outside of the factory. In summer of 1969, the MBTA general manager Leo J. Cusick with T officials visited the Pullman Standard factory to see progress in the first completed cars. Chapter 6: Entering the Main Line. On August 6th of 1969, the first completed cars were equipped to a locomotive engine and pulled on existing railroad trackage from the Pullman Standard factory in South Shore, Chicago, Illinois to the Penn Central-owned Dover Street Railroad facility in South Boston, Massachusetts. The cars were then moved by a diesel locomotive into the Red Line junction between Columbia Road Station and Andrews Station. A 4-car 1400 set would then couple to the new cars and pull them to the Elliott Street Maintenance Repair Shop facility of the Red Line in Harvard Square, Cambridge, Massachusetts. The crews of the Red Line began testing with the new fleet of cars. On September 25, 1969, around 2:15 p.m., civic and transit representatives boarded the new trains at the Elliott Shops in Harvard Square with Governor Francis W. Sargent and Boston Mayor Kevin H. Wright, which had been given a special trip on that date. Eventually, after more testing, on December 11th of 1969, the first set was put into passenger service, running from Harvard Square Station to Ashmont Station, consisting cars 1500, 1501, 1600, and 1601. By summer of 1970, all 76 cars were delivered, and by fall of 1970, all 76 cars were in active passenger service. Chapter 7: Silverbirds. Bostonians nicknamed these cars as the Silverbirds for their natural aluminum finish for the exterior body with a thin stripe of red symbolizing the red line. Each A car of the even number 1600 series would be 64,376 pounds, which would hold the batteries and the motor generator, while each B car of the odd number 1600s would be 62,976 pounds and would only carry the compressors. Since the 1500s are manufactured as single units, they would contain both the electrical and mechanical equipment, the 1500 series would weigh 64,462 pounds. These cars could accelerate up to 70 miles per hour with a full service brake of 9 to 10 miles per hour. These cars would have a nominal acceleration rate of 2.5 miles per hour and per second, with emergency acceleration/braking of 3.25 miles per hour and miles per second. An advanced feature that these cars were equipped with is regenerative braking, or SMEE braking, in which the kinetic energy gets converted into electrical energy during braking, which gets stored into the battery of the train. Benefits of regenerative braking is that it increases energy efficiency, reduces wear and tear in the mechanical equipment, and lowers emissions. More benefits of regenerative braking is that it prevents the main brakes from overheating, equalizes braking efforts on each car of the set by applying friction. It provides smoother braking with controlled deceleration, in which this is important with heavy loads of passengers on board and operating in the rain or snow. These trains were manufactured to resist tough weather conditions, especially in wet weather. The master controller can be moved from right to left with a handoff and key out. The controller has 4 modes, which are maximum, minimum, emergency, and braking. The cab signaling works with a technometer, indicator lights, and illuminated displays to show momentum limits of 25, 40, 50, 65, and 75 miles per hour, stop, cab signal cutout, and emergency control. The most advanced features that these trains had, in which trains previously in Boston, Massachusetts didn't use, is the automatic train control, or ATC motor, and the automatic train operation, or ATO motor. Under the ATC, the operator regulates momentum of the train. If he or she exceeds the limit displayed on the sign in the bottom of the window, a sound will play, indicating of going over the limit. The operator then must move the controller to the braking position within 2.5 seconds of the warning audio. If not, the overspeed control system will trigger the emergency line and stop the train from moving. The ATO works when initiating the switch in the cab and switches the controller to maximum when the train is departing the station. This allows the train to automatically accelerate to maximum. When moving the controller from maximum, the operator can regain control for the exact station or in any situation. These were very crucial for the long-distance South Shore branch in order to maintain safety. The previous rolling stocks in Boston did not feature an ATC or ATO. These cars were proven to be better than the previous Cambridge-Dorchester Type 5 1400 fleet. These trains would be branded as the Pullman Standard 15 and 1600 series Type 1 Redline cars. These cars were quoted by the MBTA are by far the finest rapid transit cars that have ever rolled in Boston. The Red Line originally opened as the Cambridge-Dorchester line in 1912, running from Harvard Square to Park Street, then extended into Dorchester into Ashmont Station in 1928. The line was formerly under the ownership of the Boston Elevated Railway from 1912 to 1947 until it was rebranded as the Metropolitan Transit Authority, or the MTA, until 1964 when the MTA was rebranded as the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, or known as the MBTA, or known as the T. In 1967, the T chose to rebrand their rapid transit systems based on color. The Cambridge-Dorchester line was selected to become the Red Line from the Crimson Tide paint scheme, the color of red, which was based off Harvard University, as the line passes by Harvard University. The Type 1 cars were the first ever trains in Boston to adapt the color code of red. with a thin stripe of red symbolizing the Red Line and Harvard University. The Type 1 cars were the first ever trains purchased by the MBTA in history, with the first trains in Boston to feature air conditioning, embodied electric doors, cab signaling, and ATC and ATO. Chapter 8: Quincy-Boston. By mid-1971, the new South Shore branch was nearing completion. On May 5th of 1971, the new South Shore cars began testing on the finished tracks of the new branch, with sandbags being loaded inside to stimulate passengers. By early June, trains began reaching Victory Road in Dorchester. By July 16, trains could reach Wollaston Station. Cars 1600, 1601, 1642, and 1643 were the first cars to run over the outbound track, and cars 1602, 1603, 1604, and 1605 were the first cars to run over the inbound track. Eventually, on August 3rd of 1971, the first Type 1 set entered Quincy Center. Eventually, by August 9 at 9:30 a.m., the line was fully electrified. On August 11 of 1971, the first passenger train consisting cars 1636, 1637, 1650, and 1651 with supervisors and representatives of the MBTA on board the set left North Quincy Station at 2:34 p.m. and ran by Columbia Road Station, then reversing on the same track to Quincy Center Station, stopping at Wollaston Station. Eventually, on the opening day, on September 1st of 1971, 3 of the 15 and 1600 series left the Elliott Street shops in Harvard Square, with the first set, led by train 1605 at 3:08 p.m., ran passenger service from the Elliott Street yard to North Quincy Station at 3:20 p.m. Eventually, with a ribbon cutting, 1605 continued to Wollaston Station at 3:45 p.m. Then another ceremony happened. Then 1605 finally reached Quincy Center Station at 4:05 p.m. Ceremonies were held at Quincy Center from 4:20 p.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. Chapter 9: 1970s and 1980s era. The existing 1400 fleet remained operating on the Dorchester branch until the 1980s, when the fleet was rebuilt with an ATC and an ATO to operate revenue service on the South Shore branch, while the 15 and 1600 series fleet saw operating both on the South Shore branch and the Dorchester branch. Trains were seen operating 4-car sets most of the time. However, during off-peak hours, trains were seen operating 2-car sets. The T initially had the 1500s to be single units in order to operate proposed 3-car train sets and 5-car train sets, as most stations on the Red Line during the 1970s were long enough to handle 5-car train sets in the station platforms. However, this was never implemented. The 1500 series saw more durability and better performance due to containing both mechanical and electrical equipment. In the 1970s, the US government was planning on constructing the Harvard Kennedy School and the JFK Park on where the Red Line storage was located. Eventually, the MBTA was in the task of moving the existing railroad shops at Harvard Square to somewhere else. Eventually, that issue was resolved on November 21st of 1969. The T pledged on acquiring the Dover Street Railroad facility in South Boston from Penn Central. On December 19 of 1969, the T acquired 24 acres of the Dover Street shops from Penn Central for about $7 million to construct the new South Boston, Cabot Street, maintenance repair shops for the Red Line with a bus garage repair/fueling facility which holds up to 200 buses. Eventually, on September 16th of 1972, a groundbreaking was held for the new facility for the Red Line and buses. The facility called for a new layover storage by Broadway Station by Dorchester Avenue, a non-revenue platform for the operators, an office complex, an upgraded machine shop featuring racks, a car wash, upgraded technology and tools, with a long-distance track from the south of the shops connecting to the main line of the Red Line between Andrews Station and Columbia Road Station. Construction began in 1972. By 1974, the new Cabot Street Maintenance Repair Facility was completed, and by 1976, all equipment was moved from the former Elliott Street shops from Cambridge into South Boston, with the demolishing of the old shops taking place in 1976. The present-day Harvard Kennedy School and the JFK Park sits in the place of the former Elliott Street shops. In August of 1972, a wayside and in-car noise and vibration level measurement was conducted on the Red Line for the U.S. Department of Transportation. This involved capturing the motion movements, vibration levels, and all evaluation on the 15 and 1600 series fleet operating on the South Shore branch. On August 1st of 1975, a horrific incident occurred on the Red Line. Cambridge-Dorchester Type 5 lead car 1402 came to a halt at signal 236 due to a backed-up train in the front. Behind 1402 set, Type 1 Red Line car 1604 was coordinated by signal 234 and struck 1402 at 4:58 p.m. 3 minutes later, Cambridge-Dorchester Type 5 lead car 1431 collided into 1604 set, injuring 154 passengers on board. Luckily, rescue teams showed up and evacuated everyone, and all passengers were hospitalized. It was later revealed that due to a malfunction on the train's stop tripper on 1604 and 1431, and operations on 1604 and 1431, which were violated, led to the cause of the incident. 1604 and 1605 received severe damage on the exterior body and motor equipment and reached beyond repair. 1604 and 1605 were permanently retired, decommissioned, and stored north of Cabot Street Yard to serve as a parts resource to maintain the rest of the fleet, until later being moved to Codman Yard in south of Ashmont Station in the 1990s, eventually later being scrapped on property on February 13th of 2011 after serving 36 years as a parts resource. In 1978, another U.S. Department of Transportation fleet evaluation was conducted on various rapid transit rolling stocks in the United States, in which this includes the 15 and 1600 series South Shore cars. In the same year, the T began on the Southeast Braintree Extension Project and the Northwest Alewife Extension Project on the Red Line. In July of 1980, the 15 and 1600 series rolling stock entered the roster of North American rapid transit cars from 1945 to 1980. In 1983, revenue service on the Red Line was increasing significantly as the Red Line became the most used rapid transit line with 125,000 daily riders of the Red Line in 1983. At the time, the T began construction on extending existing station platforms on the Red and Orange lines to transition from 4-car train sets to 6-car train sets by 1987, in which newer rolling stock was required for the Red Line. Chapter 10: More Pullmans. With the high value and success of the existing Pullman Standard Silverbird trains on the Red Line, the T decided on purchasing additional cars from Pullman Standard. However, Pullman Standard Corporation became defunct in the 1980s, and most of its assets and divisions across America were closing down, and by 1987, all of its remaining assets were acquired by Bombardier Transportation Corporation of Canada. The T with the design cues from 1968 of the 15 and 1600 series contracted Urban Transportation Development Corporation, or UTDC, of Ontario, Canada for 58 identical carbon copies of the existing 15 and 1600 series rolling stock on the Red Line. Eventually, on March 14 of 1984, the T signed a $52 million contract with UTDC, with 80% funds being provided by the federal government. Car body manufacturing would be completed at the Canadian Car Foundry of Montreal, Canada, while assembly and electrical equipment would be completed at the UTDC plant in Detroit, Michigan. These were constructed using the exact same materials used from the previous fleet, although some minor changes would be done. Instead of going for glow sign number plates, its car number would just be painted. A few new key features were added, with an emergency door levers being included so passengers can open doors in any case of an emergency. The new 1700 series would feature a cab-built ATO with a different flooring and a couple new mechanical upgrades. These cars would contain the same Westinghouse equipment used for the previous 15 and 1600 series rolling stock. These cars would be manufactured as single units, but featuring one operator's cab in the front with a holster controller and marker lights in the rear ends of each car. The new cars would also feature two-tone analog bell chimes installed next to the doors when they are about to close, as a safety feature to warn passengers. The new cars would be branded as the Type 2 Red Line cars, numbered 1700 to 1757, which would couple with the existing Pullman Standard 15 and 1600 series fleet. Eventually, manufacturing of the new Type 2 fleet began at the Canadian Car Foundry in Montreal, Canada in 1986. The completed shells and components would be shipped to Detroit, Michigan, where final assembly and Westinghouse equipment would be installed. Eventually, in fall of 1987, the first completed cars would be loaded on a flat car and pulled along by a Conrail locomotive diesel engine from Detroit, Michigan to the MBTA South Boston Cabbage Street rail yard. The crews at Cabbage shops began testing with the new fleet. Eventually, on December 30th of 1987, the T chose cars 1705, 1704, 1700, and 1701 for the first set, and cars 1709, 1708, equipped to 1628 and 1629, run revenue service between Alewife Station to Ashmont Station and Braintree Station. By 1988, more of the tested 1700 series were placed into active passenger service. By January 31st of 1989, all 58 cars were delivered. By April 5th of 1989, all 58 cars were in active passenger service. A major change was the appearance of the exterior body. Instead of going for the natural aluminum finish with a thin stripe of red, they chose to create more of an atmospheric and flashy appearance, with bright red cherry for the bottom half, white on the top half, and gray for the roof. The new Type 2 cars weighed about 71,600 pounds and increased revenue service and proved to be more reliable. These cars overall shared the same characteristics with the 15 and 1600 series fleet. These cars were purchased as single units as they were proven to be more reliable, which contained both the mechanical and electrical equipment. Since these cars were purchased as single units, a single car could operate by itself and move forward and reverse just like the 1500 series. The new 1700 series would serve as a supplementation to the existing 15 and 1600 series rolling stock in order to increase revenue and to operate full 6-car sets. The T was doing good with this new fleet of cars in passenger service. Another change that these cars had from the previous 15 and 1600 series rolling stock is the interior layout. Instead of going for the transverse style, these cars had 62 leather cushioned bucket seats installed next to the walls to create a more standing area. Chapter 11: Life Extension. In 1983, the T finished rebuilding its 1400 fleet with an ATO and ATC installed for the newly opened Braintree extension. The 1400 fleet was repainted to bright red cherry in the bottom half, white on the top half, and gray for the roof, now becoming the Redbirds. Eventually, the T decided on overhauling the existing 15 and 1600 series rolling stock on the Red Line. On November 14 of 1984, the T approved a $35.4 million contract with General Electric to rebuild 74 cars at the PX Engineering facility in South Boston. This would include installation of new signal equipment, seating arrangement, reinforced car floors, restore car interiors and exteriors, propulsion upgrades, and more mechanical and electrical work. This also included for the 1500 series to get their rear end operator's cab being removed in order to reduce maintenance costs and allow more space for seating and standing. However, the 1500 series remained as single units with a host-color controller being left in the rear ends of each car, which allowed single cars to operate in reverse. The destination sign and old headlights remained intact in the rear ends of each 1500 series. Major changes were the interior seating layout being changed from transverse style to individual seating being attached to the walls of each car in order to allow more standing and produce more space. The main change was the appearance of the exterior body, transitioning from the natural aluminum silver body to the classic paint scheme of bright red cherry in the bottom half, white on the top half, and gray for the roof, just like the 1400 and 1700 series fleet Redbirds. In 1985, 6 cars were completed. In 1986, 38 cars were completed, and by the end of 1987, 74 trains were fully rebuilded. The 1500 and 1700 series fleet remained operating in married pairs to maintain practice, and the Type 1 and Type 2 fleet operated in 6-car train sets by 1989. In the mid-1990s, automatic bell chimes were fitted onto the 15 and 1600 series fleet as a caution to passengers for doors closing. In 1989, the T began looking for a replacement for the 1962-1963 Pullman Standard Cambridge-Dorchester Type 5 fleet, as that fleet had several issues showing up. In 1990, the T contracted Bombardier for the new Type 3 1800 fleet to replace the existing 1400 fleet. Now, with the technical issues on the 1400 fleet of constant mechanical and electrical failures, the T thought of having Bombardier also replace the existing 15 and 1600 fleet before the new millennium. However, this never happened. The T instead ordered 86 cars to fully replace the 1400 series before the new millennium. The T had a high hope that the existing Type 1 fleet would serve an additional decade of service. Chapter 12: 2000s and 2010s Era. In the 2000s era, various changes would happen within the MBTA as a whole. In 2000, the MBTA was faced with the Forward Funding Act of 1999, which lowered state funding of tax share to the MBTA to 20%. In the 1990s, sales tax grew by 6.5% each year. However, in the 2000s, it grew only by 1%. The MBTA faced a deficit of $160.4 million. During this time, the MBTA was completing major work on the system as a whole, which includes maintenance and repairs, making all stations ADA accessible, and completing various track work and system hull upgrades. The T during this time was replacing its older rolling stock on the green and blue lines, which also included replacement of older buses. In February of 2008, the MBTA began looking for a replacement for the aging rolling stock on the red and orange lines. However, in 2008, a financial crisis broke loose, stock markets crashed, and ridership dropped. Most transit agencies in the United States were choosing to hold up cash in order to not go bankrupt. The T also had a debt of $5 billion at the time from the Big Dig project, which led to the T choosing not to replace its aging rolling stock on the red and orange lines. During this time in 2008, the leather cushioned bucket seats on both the red and orange line rolling stock were replaced with carpet leather seats with cushions removed. This was done in order to prevent vandalism, tearing, and in order to reduce cleaning costs. In 2009, the Pullman Standard 15 and 1600 series fleet reached 40 years of age and passed its warranty. With the T choosing not to replace its aging rolling stock would result in more future issues. Boston experienced one of the harshest snowfalls from 2010 to 2012, in which snow would pile up on the tracks and disable moving vehicles. This affected surface level operations on the rapid transit systems of the MBTA. The outdated rolling stock on the red and orange lines suffered the most. One of the major issues the fleet suffered was snow getting inside the traction motors and propulsion system. What is a traction motor? A traction motor is a fundamental device in which it turns electrical energy into conservative force for the propulsion system in order for the train to move. A traction motor requires proper space, air, and moisture for it to properly function. However, due to snow piling up on the tracks, leading to snow injecting into the traction motors, leading to malfunctions and breakdowns. The 1600 series rolling stock suffered the most in the 2010s. As mentioned before, each even number car carried the batteries and the motor generator for the pair, while each odd number car carried the compressors for the pair, in which, due to both cars not carrying the equal amount of equipment, led to problems of suspension failures and lesser strength within the propulsion system, which led to more mechanical and electrical problems. Since the fleet reached over 40 years due to its age and being overwhelmed, the 1600s would often break down more compared to the 15 and 1700 series. As mentioned before, each 15 and 1700 series unit were constructed as single units. Each car was both electrically and both mechanically compatible. The 1600 series were often seen breaking down more on the red line, in which this limited the amount of 1600 series trains seen operating in full 6-car train sets containing only the 1600s. Another issue that the MBTA faced with these cars are parts and resources. Certain parts for these cars were no longer produced at the time, since Pullman Standard was no longer a company and shut down by 1987, and UTDC later becoming a part of Bombardier. Those companies were no longer manufacturing and producing parts to maintain the red line, 15, 16, and 1700 series rolling stock. in which the MBTA had to purchase the molds of the individual parts from UTDC and had to be blacksmithed inside the MBTA Cabbage Street shops in order to maintain its fleet. The Type 1 and Type 2 rolling stock needs to be inspected every 85,000 miles or every 90 days in order to ensure safety and check for any problems. However, due to budget cuts, proper inspection, routine fleet maintenance, and repairs dropped significantly on the MBTA. Since the crews at the cabbage shops weren't providing proper care for its Red Line fleet, several issues begin to show up within its rolling stock on the Red Line. Rust, corrosion, and cracking begin to show up within the exterior body and interior of these cars, in which it slowly began to reveal its natural aluminum body due to untreated rust. The MBTA on October 20 of 2010 programmed an in-house fleet overhaul of the UTDC 01600's Type 2 rolling stock inside the Cabbage Street Maintenance Repair Facility in South Boston with a budget of $46 million in the T's hand. This work would include upgrading the propulsion system, air systems, door couplers, operator's cab, and passenger amenities, repaint, cleaning, interior work, and window replacement. Early phases of production began back in June of 2010. The rebuild phase at the Cabbage Street shops would work in 6 stations, which are undercarriage cleaning and vehicle preparation, undercarriage and interior work, truck installation and leveling, truck shop and sub-assembly area, paint and final test. Prototype installations and first production installations began with cars 1712 and 1713, which began back in June of 2010. Official production began on cars 1706 and 1707 back in August 15 of 2010. Eventually, on July 27 of 2011, cars 1706 and 1707 were completed and returned back to active service. Eventually, by December 1st of 2016, the last 2 cars, 1716 and 1717, entered the program and were completed. On October 22nd of 2013, MassDOT awarded the MBTA $1.3 billion to replace its aging rolling stock on the red and orange lines. The T on May 15 of 2014 announced 152 new cars for the orange line and 74 new cars for the red line to replace its aging 15 and 1600 series fleet. However, later chose to increase it to 132 cars to replace its 1700 series rolling stock. Despite the ongoing rehab, the fleet was 26 years old and there wasn't any guarantee on how long the fleet would last. The MBTA awarded CNR China on October 22nd of 2014 for 132 new red line cars and 152 new orange line cars, costing at $566 million. CNR later joined with CSR to become CRRC of Beijing, China in January of 2015. The MBTA selected CRRC because it was the lowest bidder and the MBTA at the time was in financial debt. On December 12 of 2016, the T purchased an additional 120 cars from CRRC for $249 million to replace its Bombardier 1800 Type 3 fleet, as it was reported to cost $200 million to overhaul 86 cars, which have been in service for 22 years. Ideally, the MBTA wanted to have the same type of fleet on the red line in order to make repairs and maintenance easier with just one type of fleet without having to have 2 different types of trains requiring different parts and resources. Eventually, the MBTA began to take preparations for the new fleet of cars. Chapter 13: Accidents and Derailments. In December of 2009, cars 1608 and 1609 was involved in a yard derailment at Cadgate Yard, south of Braintree Station. This led to severe damage on the mechanical and electrical equipment and reached beyond repair. 1608 and 1609 were permanently retired, decommissioned, and later moved to Codman Yard, where it would serve as counterparts to maintain the rest of the fleet. On January 29 of 2015, another incident would happen on the Red Line. Lead car 1619 came approaching at Quincy Center Station at 7:20 a.m., although had a malfunction leading to 1619 catching on fire. Passengers were scared and began smashing windows in order to escape. After an investigation, it was later revealed that 1619 had a propulsion issue leading to the cause of the incident. 1618 and 1619 were later repaired and returned back to active service. On December 8 of 2015, another incident would happen on the Red Line. Operator of lead car 1502 was at Braintree Station with 50 passengers aboard on 1502 set. The operator of 1502 was setting the train to bypass mode in order to pass a broken signal at Braintree Station. However, due to several misfollowed steps, 1502 left Braintree without an operator, traveling on its own until stopping at North Quincy Station when the Operations Control Center cut the power off the third rail. After an investigation, it showed that a microphone cord was wrapped around the operator's hand crank in that he flipped a switch underneath the train, which triggered the bypass mode and allowed the train to go on its own. The operator was supposed to engage a brake before flipping the switch on the train. However, he misfollowed that step, leading to the runaway train incident. Despite the incident being the operator's fault, the train set itself used outdated technology from the 1960s, in which these did not measure the safety standards of the 21st century. Modern trains like the Bombardier 1800 series, purchased back in the 1990s, which had modern technology which was suitable for the 21st century and followed safety measures. The Type 3 fleet had an ultra-modern spring-loaded hand crank in which when the operator was controlling it and holding onto the hand crank, the train would accelerate. When the operator would release the hand crank, it would return to its neutral position, causing the train to halt. The old Type 1 and Type 2 cars did not feature what the Type 3s had and instead used outdated Wapco hand cranks from the 1960s. A couple years later, on February 21st of 2018 at 9:20 a.m., a Red Line train set was heading northbound to Alewife and was about approaching Andrews Station. However, the rear two cars, 1742 and 1743, derailed and later derailed by itself and came to a halt at Andrews Station. This created mass panic as passengers on board described the incident as windows were shattering and breaking through, leading to a horrific sight. It was later revealed that 1742 and 1743 had a motor failure leading to the cause of the incident. 1742 and 1743 were later repaired and returned back to active service. On June 11 of 2019, around 6 o'clock a.m., lead car 1602 was heading southbound to Braintree and was approaching JFK UMass Station. Before entering the station, 1602 derailed off tracks and destroyed a signal box on the way before coming to a halt at JFK UMass Station. 60 passengers were aboard on 1602 set, with all 60 passengers being safely evacuated with no injuries reported except for one person. It was revealed that 1602 had a fractured axle, which led to the cause of the derailment. It was also revealed that there was an issue on the brush assembly underneath the train. Now, the brush receives electricity from the motor and moves it along the ring wrapped around the axle, which then moves it through the wheels and into the rails. A normal functional ring would be made out of slick clean steel, which would be sealed off from the environment to prevent it from being worn down. However, the ring next to the fractured axle from 1602 was heavily rusted and destroyed. In December of 2018, a maintenance inspection was conducted on cars 1602 and 1603, and it was listed that the assembly itself was missing the cover that kept it sealed, but the inspection workers did not closely look at the rings for damage. Another inspection was conducted on 1602 and 1603 in May of 2019, a month before the derailment. It was stated that two different brush parts were replaced on the train that derailed, but no workers caught the damage to the ring itself. Now, the wheel axle on 1602 was constructed back in 1992 and reached 27 years of age. 1602 and 1603 received severe damage from the incident and were beyond repair. 1602 and 1603 were permanently retired, decommissioned, and stored north of Cabbage Street Yard, where it would serve as parts to maintain the rest of the fleet. In 2019, the Pullman Standard 15 and 1600 series Type 1 fleet reached 50 years of age and was in an overdue retirement. Any typical subway rolling stock would last from 25 to 40 years. However, the 1500 and 1600 fleet was in an overdue retirement. The T had no choice but to continue using the existing fleet, with the new cars not arriving yet until in fall of 2019, the first set of the new CRRC 1900 series Type 4 Redline cars arrived for testing. Eventually, on December 30th of 2020, the first set consisting cars 1900, 1901, 1902, 1903, 1904, and 1905 hit the rails for revenue service on the Red Line. It was projected that all 252 cars would be delivered by 2022. However, due to the pandemic at the time and staffing limitations within the CRRC factories, it was delayed to 2024. However, issues with the new red and orange line cars began to show, and the fleet was removed from service multiple times. On March 16 of 2021, a CRRC train set on the orange line derailed at Wellington Station, leading to the new red and orange line cars being pulled away from service, until after an investigation, they were returned to service in January of 2022. However, in June of 2022, the new red and orange line cars were pulled from service again after a battery explosion on the orange line CRRC set at Wellington Station. They did later return to active service in July of 2022. At the time, only 6 of the new 1900s were delivered for the Red Line. Initially, the T was choosing to replace its older rolling stock on the Orange Line rather than the Red Line, due to the trains on the Orange Line suffering most than the Red Line. On September 28th of 2021 at 9:45 a.m., lead car 1745 was heading northbound to Alewife and was approaching Broadway Station. Once arriving at Broadway Station, 1745's rear car 1744 derailed off tracks and collided within the station platforms at Broadway Station, causing a window to shatter out. A passenger on board on 1745 said described the scene to be horrific as the train slammed itself violently and dragged itself forward. 47 passengers were on board on 1745 said. Luckily, all 47 passengers were safely evacuated and no injuries were found. After an investigation, it was revealed that a bolt showed up on the tracks, which may have caused 1744 to derail at Broadway Station, although there was no official determination of cause of the derailment. 1744 and 1745 were permanently retired, decommissioned, and stored north of Cabbage Street Yard, where it would serve as parts to maintain the rest of the fleet. On April 10 of 2022, a tragic, dreadful incident would happen on the Red Line. 39-year-old Robinson Lallen was riding car 1510, which was heading northbound to Alewife and approached Broadway Station. When Robinson was exiting the train, the doors closed, leading to Robinson's arm getting stuck in the door. The operator of 1510, without realizing and not checking the platforms, started the train and was headed for South Station, dragging Robinson in the tunnels and leading to his death. This dreadful incident led to public and media attention, and people began describing their fears for riding the T. Within the next 72 hours, the MBTA inspected all of its Red Line trains to make sure there were no issues. 1510 and 1511 were permanently retired, decommissioned, and stored north of Cabot Street Yard for investigation. After a long investigation, it was revealed that the cause of the incident was a short-circuit failure on the doors of 1510. Now, Pullman manufactured these cars when the door was open within the train. The electrical circuit that allows the train to move would be incomplete, which prevents the train from moving. However, on car 1510, the prominent wires on the master controller panel were touching a mounting screw, in which created a short circuit, which allowed the train to leave the station without all of its doors being closed. Cars 1510 and 1511 were reported to not be maintained or inspected since 2021. It was also later revealed by the federal investigators that they discovered that the camera monitor used by the operator of 1510 had a 19-foot blind spot that prevented her from being able to view the car doors that were malfunctioning, as well as the car's pilot light. It was finally revealed to the public that car 1510 was a 53-year-old subway car, part of 76 cars, put into service from 1969 to 1970. It was concluded that the operator of 1510 failed to check if something was within the doors of the train set, leading to the dreadful incident. The MBTA in May of 2025 agreed to pay $5 million in lawsuit towards the family of Robinson. 1510 and 1511 were shipped off to scrap in August of 2025. This tragic event sparked tensions among the media, and riders began to show concerns on riding the T, which eventually led to a full Federal Transit Administration investigation over the MBTA system as a whole. Eventually, the FTA released its final report back in July of 2022 and addressed key issues which needed to be solved in order for the MBTA to operate without having to be fully viewed by the FTA. Eventually, the MBTA took accountability and began various maintenance work on the MBTA system with track and joint replacement, signal upgrades, sanitization, signal work, and various other tasks. During this time, various slow zones were placed on the MBTA rapid transit system, in which trains could not travel beyond 25 to 5 miles per hour. Riders were frustrated because they would have to prepare in advance and trains would be running slow, leading them to be delayed for work, school, home, or other necessary needs they need to attend. The MBTA was a whole mess in 2022. Chapter 14: Last Stand. In the remaining months of 2022 and the rest of 2023, the Type 1 fleet began to suffer tremendously, with several cars being taken out of service from derailments, constant breakdowns, and electrical/mechanical problems. However, only 12 of the CRRC 1900s were delivered, and the existing rolling stock began not to keep up with the slow pace of deliveries of the new cars. The MBTA system was a whole mess, with portions of the lines being closed and replaced with shuttle buses. A total of 18 of the 15, 16, and 1700 fleet were taken out of service and permanently retired due to mechanical/electrical issues. Now, no new Red Line trains were delivered for the remaining months of 2022 and most of 2023, until in October of 2023, deliveries increased, with cars 1912 and 1913 being delivered in that month. On March 29th of 2024, the T agreed to pay CRRC an additional $148 million in order to increase production and deliveries of the new Red Line cars, with a penalty of $100 per each 2 cars delayed on expected delivery. In February of 2024, the T contracted Costello Dismantling of West Wareham, Massachusetts, to start removing decommissioned Red Line cars from property and would be cut up at the Middleborough, Massachusetts scrapyard and later disposed of into recycling. This was being done in order to make room for the new Red Line cars. Eventually, the cars booked for scrap were stripped apart inside the Cabbage Street shops, with fluids drained, windows boarded up on some cars, and most mechanical and electrical equipment were removed from the cars. Scrapping officially began in March of 2024. The decommissioned trains would be securely loaded onto flatbed trucks, and the haulers would take them to the scrapyard in Middleborough, Massachusetts. Shears would be applied to tear apart the cars and be disposed into recycling for new metal. By July of 2024, 16 cars were removed from property of the MBTA. On June 8th of 2024, car body of 1643 was resold to Core Investments Real Estate Development and was repainted and moved to 383 Dorchester Avenue in South Boston and remained displayed on the lot. 1643 had its interior stripped apart and undercarriage mechanical and electrical equipment being removed. 1643 was later moved from 383 Dorchester Avenue a bit south near Andrew Station and remained displayed. On November 25th of 2024, all slow zones were removed from the Red Line and trains could return back to operating 50 miles per hour. By February of 2025, 38 of the new CRRC 1900s were delivered, with 24 in active service, in which in February of 2025, cars 1620 and 1621 were removed from active service, retired, decommissioned, and prepped for scrap, indicating that scrapping would continue as increased deliveries of the new trains. Although with slow deliveries of the new trains and the 1600 series fleet having serious issues, the MBTA on March of 2025 announced to operate 2 4-car sets on the Red Line, with a test being conducted back in January of 2025. This was being done in order to increase headways of more available trips, according to the MBTA. But in reality, this was being done so the MBTA can neglect maintenance repairs on the 15 and 1600 fleet and ship them off to scrap quicker, despite the slow-paced deliveries of the new trains and not enough in service. On March of 2025, cars 1610 and 1611 were loaded onto flatbed trucks and shipped to Costello Dismantling, where they would be eventually scrapped. By November 2025, 58 total of the 15 and 1600 series were removed and 6 of the 1700s removed from property, scrapped. In November of 2025, Cars 1754 was resold to the Boston Fire Department Moon Island Training Facility to be used as a training prop. By the end of 2025, the T was down to 18 active Pullmans and 46 active UTDCs, with the 1800s beginning to cover more trips, as well as more tested Type 4 cars were put into active revenue service. From January 25th to January 27th of 2026, the biggest snowstorm struck the Boston area, in which disrupted MBTA commuter rail and rapid transit systems, in which the existing Pullman Standard and UTDC rolling stock couldn't handle the heavy amount of snow, causing the fleet to be taken out of service for a day, and the T only relied on 6 1900 sets and 3 1800 sets, as a lot of the 1800s suffered and malfunctioned from the snow. More problems recently arose with the production of the new MBTA Redline cars, as several car bodies from the CRRC factory in China were detained by the US Customs and Border, and several worker issues occurred within the CRRC factory in Springfield, Massachusetts, leading to more delays. However, the Pullmans aren't here for that much longer, and its end date of service is near, as the T is now relying on using more 1800s and 1900s on the line more than the 15, 16, and 1700 series. However, the T is still continuing to use 4 car sets on the red line, whether that be Pullman, UTDC, Bombardier, or CRRC, in order to reduce the amount of Pullmans and UTDCs on the line, so the T can transition into using more CRRCs on the red line. In the past 85 years, the MBTA has sent its retired streetcars, buses, and trains to the Seashore Trolley Museum of Kennebunkport, Maine. Transit enthusiasts and people who love the MBTA have trusted Seashore on preserving older equipment from the MBTA. Seashore is a place where people can visit older generations of retired rolling stock and even get to ride some of them. Focusing on the red line, Seashore in 1997 acquired 1963 Pullman Standard Cambridge-Dorchester Type 5 cars 1450 and 1455 from the red line. 1450 and 1455 were loaded onto flatbed trucks and shipped to Kennebunkport, Maine, where they would be unloaded and displayed at the museum, until 20 years later, in 2017, a spring-loaded trolley pole was installed on 1450 and 1455, allowing it to operate around the museum and conduct fan trips. Seashore even acquired more previous generations of the red line, in which they acquired 1928 Osgood Bradley Cambridge-Dorchester Type 4 cars 709, 719, 749, 753, and 754 from the red line. With Seashore preserving every generation of the MBTA red line, it was expected that a pair of the old 15, 16, and 1700s would be preserved at Seashore. However, in a post from Seashore regarding preservation of old MBTA redline cars, they've stated, "We are not committed to acquiring any new acquisitions." Due to many factors such as limited space, limited funding, and limited resources, Seashore at this time is unwilling to accept any new acquisitions. The MBTA relied on Seashore Trolley Museum for preserving heavy rail equipment, with a few exceptions of streetcars, buses, and retired work equipment being salvaged to other museums besides Seashore. It's likely that all of the 1500s and 1600s will be completely scrapped by 2026 to 2027 without any museum preservations. As of 2025 and 2026, in making of this video, there are roughly 14 active 1500s left in passenger service and only 4 of the 1600s left in passenger service, with now being 46 active 1700 series with 82 active 1800 series in passenger service. There are 60 of the new CRRC 1900s now on property, with cars 1958 and 1959 being delivered recently last month, with 56 cars now in active revenue service. As of right now, there hasn't been any official fixed full retirement date for the 1500 and 1600s yet. However, they aren't here for that much longer, and it's expected for last of the older 1500 and 1600 cars to be taken out of service by the end of 2026 or some point in 2027 or before, with the 1700s being also removed from service soon once the Pullmans get shipped to scrap, with the 1800s being slowly retired into 2027 and 2028 once all 252 of the new Type 4 cars are delivered and in active service. The Pullman Standard 1500s and 1600s series Type 1 cars have served Boston well for 56 years. These cars were one of a kind in transit history, from the manual hand crank destination signs to its red, white, and gray paint scheme. These cars were unique and have become an icon and symbol of Boston, Massachusetts. These cars have introduced new technology towards Boston, Massachusetts in the 20th century, such as an automatic train control, automatic train operation, regenerative braking or SMEE braking, embodied electric doors, air conditioning, and more advanced technology. It's incredible that the MBTA was able to run these cars on the Red Line for more than 50 years. Pullman Standard was one of the greatest American car foundries in US history. The Red Line Type 1 cars are one of the last few remaining Pullman Standard manufactured rolling stock, continuing regular daily passenger trips in America, in which other transit systems do operate Pullman manufactured vehicles to this day. It's worth mentioning a shout out towards the workers and crews of the MBTA at the Cabbage Street shops for maintaining the Red Line fleet and being able to keep these cars operable for more than 50 years. It takes a lot of hard work and energy to maintain a fleet which is more than 50 years. These cars mean a lot to me since I have ridden these cars since childhood and have had a huge liking to then and now design, appearance, and noise. From the hissing brake release thundering into the stations, these cars have held a very special place inside of me, and I'll always have fond memories of riding these cars. These cars are the OGs of the Red Line and have rattled along the rails for decades and half of a century. Despite these cars being great, some people have slowly become tired of riding these cars and may not like them anymore or feel annoyed. Regardless, these have rolled for 56 years and for safety concerns and what the riders of the T deserve. At this time, it is unknown if the MBTA is planning on preserving an operable pair to a railroad museum, as Seashore at this time is unwilling to acquire anything new. Whether a pair being preserved to a museum or not, it's now time for these cars to leave the running rails and be written in history as one of the greatest rolling stock in all of Boston, Massachusetts. These trains will be cherished forever, and I will always remember them and hold a special place in my heart. These trains have really meant a lot to me. I will be sad once these cars finally retire and if none get saved in an operable state, but their legacy on the Red Line will always remain in history and to this day. The reason I made this video because since childhood, growing up in Massachusetts, I had a huge interest towards trains, and we at the time didn't have a car, so we used the MBTA a lot. I wanted to know how these trains work and operated. I began research on the Pullman cars, in which I loved and preferred them over the 1800s since childhood. I worked on this video since the September of 2025, and I have made a previous history video of the 1500s and 1600s from March to May 2025, but I felt it was lacking several things and thought of making another video in full depth, including almost every single fact and info about these cars, and I've poured my entire soul into making this video. I've wanted everyone who is a rail and transit enthusiast or just a regular train rider or who are interested to know about these cars and their history. This is a very long video, and thank you all so much for watching this video, and it means a lot to me. Thank you Pullman Standard for these awesome subway cars, and thank you to the MBTA for acquiring these awesome cars and running them on the Red Line for 56 years. Long live Silver Birds!
The next echelon train arrives in 1 minute. The next Braintree train arrives in 11 minutes. Attention passengers, the next echelon train is now approaching. Please stand back from the platform.
Overhaul drive doors open right.